Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we have my Game Week 11 team selection where we'll be discussing my possible transfer plans and also my benching dilemmas. If you are enjoying the content here on this channel or if you are new to the channel, please do consider subscribing. Make sure to drop a like on the video as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So very briefly, here's how I got on in Game Week 10 because we've already discussed this earlier on in the week, but it was a decent week for me, especially considering the fact that I didn't have the main man Erling Haaland who got a 16-pointer. But again, the team covered in and around that. In Haaland's place, I have DARWIN, who got 10 points. Brilliant performance from him. Looks really good in midweek once again. And I'm hoping and expecting that he starts and does well against Luton too. So DARWIN looking really good in my team. And I'm delighted that I went with him on the wild card. The midfield have been delivering for a couple of weeks now, right? Last week, all of them returned. This week, all of them apart from Bowen returned. And again, we'll discuss Bowen in a second because in midweek, Bowen looked very good. But Saka and Maddison both getting a single assist. Son and Salah both getting a single goal. Really happy with the four of them. And Bowen I still think is a very good option too. I actually benched Alvarez for a 2-pointer. And obviously Ollie Watkins got a 2-pointer as well. For me, the main decision was, do I start DARWIN or do I start Alvarez? I'm really glad I started DARWIN. And I'm probably quite lucky that Alvarez came away with nothing. I won't be benching Alvarez obviously in Game Week 11. But that decision I was actually quite happy with. And then the defence, we got 2 returns from Cash and Tsimikas with Trippier and Areola both blanking. So all in all, 66 points and only a 50k red arrow, considering the most highly owned player in the game got a 16-pointer. It is excellent. And I don't want to be that guy that keeps on talking about no Haaland, but of course it's the major thing to talk about in a team such as this. This just goes to show, even in a week where Haaland gets 16 points, you can cover him as long as your players also deliver. And in this team, I am lucky that DARWIN did, because if you replace DARWIN with a 2-pointer like Alvarez, then I'm getting quite a big red arrow. So all you need is the players that you own to deliver, your captain to actually get you a return, and it's not too bad. That being said, obviously, Bournemouth at home in 11 is a little bit trickier, but 66 points, really happy. Small red arrow, absolutely fine with. Let's look at Game Week 11. So moving on to Game Week 11, and I think the team's actually in a very good position. I've got 1 free transfer, but I've got 0 in the bank. So if I do want to make a move, it has to be either the same price or a downgrade. I'm not really a massive fan of taking a hit this week. Most of my decisions really come around benching headaches that I have in my team. And also, if I want to use this transfer to maybe downgrade someone to give me the funds to make future moves. So I also have that possibility as well. You can see my team value is now up at 103.4 million. So despite the fact that I haven't had a perfect start to the season, being ranked around 400k with really good team value, I'm actually very happy with the position that I'm currently in. You can see that my team for this week is rated at 92% according to Fantasy Football Hub with 60.3 predicted points. Again, if you want to get access to all of the stuff that I use in these videos from Fantasy Football Hub, you can get 30% off at the moment if you use my link in the description. So, goalkeepers, probably actually slightly more difficult choice than I maybe thought it would be because West Ham continued to look a little bit shaky at the back. Brentford had a very decent performance in Game Week 10. So initially I had this penciled in as a definite fixture to play Areola, but I'm looking at that Turner fixture, Aston Villa at home. We know that Forest are very good at home. We know that Villa struggles slightly away. And I'm wondering, is there a chance that Turner maybe keeps a clean sheet? Probably not, right? I'm still expecting Villa to score. Villa have still been very impressive. But I'm not really expecting a clean sheet from Areola either. So I look at that and I think there's definitely some justification if you wanted to start Turner there. And it's something that I will think about. But for the time being, I just back Areola slightly more because I think Villa are a better attack than Brentford. So for that reason, I think defensively, Forest are maybe slightly better than West Ham this season when you look at expected goals conceded. But for now, I'm backing Areola. I would love to know down below in the comments because a lot of us have the Areola and Turner combination. Who are you playing in Game Week 11? Moving on to the defence, I'm very happy with it, but I do have a benching headache this week. The 2 players that I will definitely be playing is Cash and Tsimikas, right? Cash, Aston Villa have been very decent defensively. Again, they have been better at home than they have been away. But Matty Cash is still putting up really good data. And this is a fixture where I back him to do fairly well. So I will not be benching Cash in any fixture, which is at least okay on paper, just due to the attacking threat that he does carry. Of course, Cash is better when Bailey isn't in the team, when they've got like McGinn who inverts. So it really does depend on the setup as to how far Cash gets forward and how good he is. And with Moreno coming back very soon, he's now back in some form of training, it may well be that Cash is asked to sit a little bit deeper and Moreno is asked to bomb on. But for now, I think Cash is fine. There is a chance that I do sell Matty Cash in the next 2 to 3 game weeks just because Villa's fixtures aren't great and he's a decent amount of money to bench. I would rather downgrade him to a 4.5 of some kind or even move him to maybe like an Arsenal defender than just repeatedly bench him because the fixtures aren't there. So Cash is fine for now, probably fine for 12, but from 13 onwards, there is a chance that I do move Matty Cash on. And then Simicast this week, of course, great fixture. Luton away. Again, Luton are better at home, so I would prefer this was Luton at home, but still a really nice fixture. Simicast is putting up about 0.2 XGI in the last couple of games per 90, so decent attacking threat. Liverpool are okay defensively, great fixture on paper, perfectly happy playing Simicast this week. He did play, obviously, midweek. I don't think that's a massive issue. There's enough of a turnaround, and I also think that Simicast is playing really well, so there's no real reason for Klopp to drop Simicast, so I'm perfectly happy with him. The rest of the defence, I think you could justify starting all three for different reasons, right? In my starting 11 at the moment, I do have Kieran Trippier because Trippier did get a rest midweek. My main concern with Trippier at the moment is he looks knackered. He looks so tired in that Wolves game. He was giving away the ball a hell of a lot. And his end product was some of the worst I've seen for a while. It just didn't look fantastic. But even in that game, Trippier still put up over 0.5 expected assists. So he was still creating chances for his teammates, and he could have come away with a lot more in that game. And Newcastle are still a fantastic defence. You can see Eddie Howe is a system-based manager, and what I mean by that is it doesn't really matter who's playing in that back line. They will most likely keep clean sheets a lot of the time, and we saw that in midweek when he rotated quite heavily. I think that Newcastle, regardless of the fixtures coming up, will get clean sheets. I think they might be slightly more unpredictable as to when they will happen. But of course, on top of that, Kieran Trippier not only has the clean sheet potential, he also carries the attacking threat too. So in any given week, I've said this, Trippier gets you one return, whether that be a clean sheet, an assist, or a goal. He will almost always pick up 2 or 3 bonus points as well. And with someone like a Gahey or a Taylor, if they keep a clean sheet, you can't guarantee bonus points. Even with an attacking return, you can't always. Whereas Trippier, we know, is that good for bonus because he creates so many chances, he makes so many passes. So for that reason, I think Trippier's got the higher ceiling, and if he gets anything, you're likely to get a probably 8 or 9 pointer from him. So that's the reason I've got Trippier at the moment. But if you were to ask me, are Arsenal likely to score? I would say yes, in which case I am relying on an attacking return from him. So not massively happy about starting him this week, but he's in there at the moment. Gahey and Taylor obviously playing against each other. I could genuinely see this being a 0-0. And when I say I could see this being a 0-0, and also saying that I don't mind Turner, my brain's starting to think, is this a bench boost week? But then all you need is that game between Palace and Burnley to be 1-1, 2-1, which it could quite easily be. And then 2 of my players have blanked on the bench. Realistically, Turner's probably not keeping a clean sheet, and I'm reliant on that final player. So I have thought about the bench boost this week, but I'm just not quite there with it at the moment. I don't think the fixtures are there. But if I were to start one out of Gahey and Taylor, despite it being an away game for Gahey, I probably would lean that way just because Palace are a better defence and his bonus points has actually been pretty decent lately. So if I were to lean one way, it'd probably be Gahey. It probably wouldn't be Taylor, and that's why that's that way on the bench at the moment. So I do have a bit of a benching headache with the defence. I would love to know what you think down below in the comments. Would you start Trippier, Gahey, or Taylor? Try and give a bit of reasoning as well. I'm just leaning Trippier because he has goal threat, assist threat, clean sheet potential as well, and he's such a bonus points monster. So moving on to the midfield, and it's certainly not ideal this week, especially when you look at the fixtures, and I am going to have to bench one of my midfielders this week, just on benching decisions, benching headaches, benching dilemmas, whatever you want to call them. I did want to discuss that briefly because I think this gets a lot of stick, right? You can see Bowen on my bench and immediately people will say, this is the issue of going without Haaland. You have to spread the funds around and then you have to bench really good assets. I don't view it like that. I view it as every single week I get to choose not to play one of my players that I don't think will get many points. And the last 3 weeks, I've absolutely nailed that. Now, I won't make a good decision every week. There will be a week where I leave a 10, 12, 15 pointer on my bench. But that happens sometimes even if you have a weak bench. Taylor got a clean sheet last week. But if you look across the last 3 weeks, Game week 8, I benched Bowen for a 2-pointer. Game week 9, I benched Darwin for a 4-pointer. But in that week, Darwin was my lowest scoring forward or attacker. So that was a good benching decision. And then in game week 10, I benched Alvarez for a 2-pointer. So 3 weeks in a row, I've chosen my lowest scoring attacker and benched them, which I think shows that rotating in and out of your starting 11 and having a strong 8th attacker isn't necessarily the worst thing. It actually allows you to hopefully bench your weakest player for that week. The issue comes in weeks like this where I don't think it is completely apparent who the weakest player is. I think across those 3 weeks, Bowen had comfortably the most difficult fixture in 8. In game week 9, Darwin was benched, so we benched him for that reason. And in game week 10, again, Alvarez had, on paper, the most difficult fixture. This week, I think it's a lot trickier because the players with the slightly trickier fixtures, I think, could do well. And the player with the slightly easier fixtures, I may be slightly more inclined to bench. So these are weeks where it can be a lot more difficult. I'll start with Mohamed Salah because he will be my captain this week. He did play 90 minutes midweek. I don't think that's the end of the world. I think it's Mohamed Salah. I think he could play 90 minutes like 3 or 4 times a week and he would be fine. His injury record is impeccable. His minutes in the league for Liverpool is impeccable at the moment as well. And I just think with the stuff going on with Diaz, Gakpo just coming back from injury, I would suspect that the front line for Liverpool will be Jota, Darwin and Salah. That would be my prediction at the moment. And there's just no one that can play on the right wing at the moment for Liverpool other than Salah. Diaz kind of can play it, but again, the issues that are ongoing with him at the moment. And also, it just would be madness, I think, to bench Salah for Diaz to play on the right wing. So Salah is nailed. May he get a slightly earlier sub? Potentially, but I just don't think he needs the rest. So that wouldn't worry me because I did see a few questions about that on Twitter. And it is a fantastic fixture. As I said in the Simicast section, Luton are better at home. So if this was Luton at home for Salah, I would actually say he is arguably as good of an option as Haaland for captain. The fact that it is away, though, I do think it makes Haaland the standout captaincy option this week, especially because Haaland is at home. So just to answer the question around if you own both, who would I captain? It's comfortably Haaland, but that doesn't mean that Salah is a bad option. And could I see Salah outscoring Haaland? Of course I could. I mean, he's done it in some of the previous game weeks. But I don't think it's overly likely. I think Haaland will probably put Bournemouth to the sword. I think I can see at least one attacking return for Salah. And for me, when I look at my team, he is just the standout captaincy option. So Salah will be my captain. The other 4 players, Saka, Son, Maddison and Bowen, you could justify benching all 4 of them. The only one that I'm not going to bench is Son, because as far as I'm aware, he is still first choice for penalties. That's our prediction anyway. There's no reason other than a bit of a prediction to say that. And his goal threat is absolutely insane at the moment. And his minutes actually look a little bit better in the last couple, and he looks a lot fitter. So everything about Son that I already loved is still there, plus the fact that I do think he's looking fitter and sharper, and it looks like he's struggling less with that injury. So for all of those reasons, I haven't once contemplated benching Son this week. But throughout the week, Saka, Maddison and Bowen have been rotating for my first sub. I just think that Saka and Maddison are slightly better FPL options for me than Bowen. Saka is on penalties some/most of the time, so he has that in his locker as well. I just think that Arsenal are a better attack. I expect them to create more chances in any given game. And I also think that despite the fact that the likes of Trippier did get a rest in midweek, Newcastle do look a bit tired at the moment, and they have struggled slightly more in the last couple defensively, conceding chances. So I just don't love the idea of benching Saka. Now, my issue with that is twofold. I've got Trippier in my team, so do I maybe just back Newcastle to do the job over Arsenal? Potentially. On top of that, Saka is really bad away from home. Not only last season, but going into this season as well. He is just much, much better at home. And so if I'm saying Newcastle aren't the worst defence, even if they haven't been great over the last couple, Saka isn't great away from home. Is he maybe the one to bench this week? Something feels wrong about benching Saka because he's been one of the best FPL assets in the game over the last couple of seasons. But I have to remember, this isn't me saying Saka's a bad option. It's saying in this specific week, Saka has the most difficult fixture in my team. He's not great away from home. And I'm trying to, I guess, if I start Trippier, I'm backing Newcastle to do the job over Arsenal. So maybe Saka is the one to bench. Obviously, Maddison also has a very tricky fixture. I don't think people realise how good Chelsea have been defensively this season. I already have Son in my team. Do I want to double up from an attack against a very, very tricky or very, very good, solid Chelsea defence? Not overly, but Son and Maddison have had a rest midweek, which is great if there were any doubts about them being a little bit tired. Maddison is putting up outrageously good data this season. But actually, between Saka, Maddison and Bowen, Maddison has the best data at about a 0.7 XGI. So there is a lot to like about Maddison. Multiple routes to points, playing in a very attacking Spurs team that are top of the league. Yes, Chelsea are good, but this is at home. I could see there being goals for Spurs in this. And we still don't know that Son is definitely on penalties. I do have this kind of feeling that Maddison could step up and take a pen. And I would hate for it to be in the week that I've benched him. Because there was a quote that came out from Maddison that basically said Spurs don't necessarily have a penalty taker. They've all been practicing penalties. And whoever is feeling confident on the pitch at that time will be the one to take it. Maddison is a very confident man, and you could comfortably see him, especially if he wins the pen, being the one that steps up and takes it. I would say that Son, whilst he can be a little bit greedy, is also the club captain and quite selfless. So, yes, I could see Maddison taking a penalty as well. So there are lots of reasons that I like Maddison, and in a similar way to Saka, it just doesn't feel quite right benching him. So for the reasons that I've just listed, I've landed on Jarrod Bowen to bench, but this doesn't feel great either for a couple of reasons. Bowen is a great option with really, really nice expected goals this season. He has returned in every single away game this season in the Premier League, which isn't great, right? This is another away game. This feels like a very Bowen fixture. Away at Brentford just feels like a fixture you could see him doing quite well in. And he returned with an assist and a goal against Arsenal in midweek in the EFL Cup. So, do I feel great benching Bowen? No. And of course, this is again where people will say, this is a real benching headache. And this is a decision where I could see me getting it wrong. Every other week, I think there has been a clear option pretty much of who should be benched. This week, I don't think there is one. So, I've given you all of my reasons there, rambling on for far too long about it. I would love to know down below, out of Saka, Maddison and Bowen, who would you bench? I'm leaning Bowen at the moment because I just think Saka and Maddison are such excellent FPL options. And despite West Ham looking decent midweek, they haven't quite been at it in the recent weeks. So that's my decision at the moment. I'll almost definitely change my mind before the deadline. Let's take a look at the 3 forwards. So the 3 forwards this week are looking absolutely brilliant. And to be honest, there is no one in the game I would rather own than these 3. No, I'm joking. Obviously, Erling Haaland is the one that's missing. I look at the 3 forwards and they do genuinely look amazing. Watkins against Forest, again, that isn't an overly easy fixture. There's some justification to bench Watkins because whilst Villa are great, they're not as good away from home and Forest are good defensively. So I don't think I'll do it, but there is justification. Alvarez against Bournemouth, absolutely wonderful. Brilliant fixture on paper. If Haaland smashes it, fingers crossed, because this didn't happen in Game Week 10, fingers crossed in Game Week 11, Alvarez is involved in some way, and at least I get some of the points from the Man City goals. And then Darwin against Luton away, I was worried about a benching here, but he was actually rested midweek. Gakpo started. Yes, Gakpo did score, but he's just coming back from injury. He started midweek. Darwin started on the bench, came off of the bench, and within 10 minutes scored an absolute wonder goal. I would be surprised to see Darwin bench now. It's very difficult to predict Darwin's minutes. And that Liverpool front line, we've seen some surprises from Klopp before. Actually, I can't remember what week it was, and I can't remember who it was, but it was either Diaz and Darwin started in Europe on like the Thursday, and then on the Sunday, they then both started again, or it was Gakpo and Jota. I can't remember which way it was, but Klopp has done it before where he started attackers midweek and then started the exact same attackers at the weekend, but I don't think that'll be the case. I think Darwin is playing far too well. I do think he's first choice at the moment. He looked amazing when he came off the bench. I think Darwin will start, and as a result, Darwin against Luton away is a great option. To be honest, if I was 100% sure on his minutes, which I'm not, so I won't be able to do this, I would be tempted to captain Darwin because Darwin's data is better than Salah's. His conversion rate and his finishing this season has been fantastic as well. And in these sorts of games, he hogs the big chances. So I actually think if you were secure about Darwin's minutes, or if you are confident he starts and you don't own Haaland, Darwin is a genuine captaincy shout this week. But for me, I need to be more secure about his minutes. And I think with Salah, I know there's no chance that Salah's benched. Whereas with Darwin, there's always that underlying worry that he may get benched. And I don't want to captain a player ever that I think is a bit of a rotation risk. So for that reason, Salah will be getting the armband. So that is the front line. I am very, very happy with it. As I said, there is a small piece of justification that is Watkins that could be benched and that I moved to a 3-5-2. But I just think Watkins has been so good recently. I'm not overly worried about the Forest defence. I'm not overly worried about the fact that he's playing away from home. I would still back him to get some decent attacking returns. So that's the team. As I said, I do have one free transfer, but nothing in the bank. And I've already got an incredibly stacked bench. And at the moment, no injury or rotation doubts. So when I've got 15 really solid players, it doesn't feel overly necessary for me to make a transfer, especially as going into 12 and 13 in particular, the team is looking a little bit shaky. And there are some players that I would like to move to. It's probably going to be those midfield slots. Let's see how Bowen and Maddison do this week. But those are the two. I love Saka, Son, Salah. I don't want to sell those 3. But Maddison and Bowen, I could see myself changing those positions around to some other midfielders. Also in my defence, I think I could end up making a defensive downgrade, probably in Game Week 13, not in 12, because he plays against Bournemouth. But I could see myself downgrading Trippier at some point to give me the funds to move around the team too. So that's the team. Let me know what you think of it down below. Let's now take a look at my watch list and my AI recommended transfers. So moving on to my watch list, and this hasn't massively changed over the last few weeks, but there are a few additions and a few recent changes. So Defensively, Saliba's the only one that I really want at the moment, desperately. And if I do downgrade Trippier at some point, I would expect that to be for an Arsenal defender, unless I need to downgrade him all the way, in which case I may move to someone like a Lascelles. But for me, I want an Arsenal defender. There are issues associated with Gabriel and Zinchenko with respect to them being slight rotation risks. I think Ben White is too expensive for me, considering he doesn't carry much attacking threat. So for me, Saliba is the one. Got a rest in midweek against West Ham. I think he'll start pretty much every Premier League game. I really like him as an option. In the midfield spot, there are quite a few that I really want. Matoma, Adingra, really, really good from Brighton. The fixtures are good coming up, and I think they are first choice. I still think Diaby is a great option. That hasn't changed over recent weeks. Obviously, his recent haul is making some people think that they should now hold him. I think Diaby owners have been very unlucky recently, but I still don't think his data is suggesting that he's going to go out and haul every week. It was a great fixture, and he delivered in that great fixture. But the fixtures longer term for Aston Villa aren't fantastic after the next couple. So I think Diaby, for me, is probably not a player that I'll transfer in, just because I think if you have him, you keep him. But there are better players with better long-term fixtures, in my opinion. Mbeumo is one of those players. The fixture this week is actually really good against West Ham at home. Then there's a couple of difficult ones. Then there's some okay fixtures after that. But do remember that Mbeumo does blank in Game Week 18 and then probably will have a double game week in Game Week 20. So it's how you plan on navigating all of those weeks. If you want a free hit in Game Week 18, then Mbeumo could be a great option, or if you can just get away with benching him. But Mbeumo is probably top of the list for me. I've chucked Fernandes in there just because Manchester United's next 3 fixtures are great. But Manchester United continue to look really, really poor, and Fernandes is on 4 yellow cards. So if he gets one more, which he seems to get booked quite often, he'll be suspended for one of the nice fixtures. So Fernandes probably isn't an option, and it's probably a good thing that he's on 4 yellows, because it puts me off going for him and having that pain associated with it. So midfield-wise, Mbeumo probably is the one that I'm most interested in. And then with the forwards, I still think João Pedro's great, and I still think Edouard is great at that cheaper price. I really like both of them. João Pedro's minutes aren't quite as secure as Edouard's, but I do still think he's first choice, and he's on penalties too. Wilson will continue to be a good option as long as he's fit and Isak isn't, so I do really like Wilson. Haaland, of course, has to be on here, but I'm not going to have him for Game Week 11 because I don't want to take a -8 and I don't want to sell half my team to get there. So for me, Haaland won't be coming in this week, but he almost certainly will around Game Week 16. And then the forward that I most want at the moment, I know it's very much a Raptor or Ross move. I love Calvert-Lewin. Calvert-Lewin and Darwin Nunez are always the 2 forwards that I love, and I always regret bringing them in. But Calvert-Lewin, when he plays, has excellent data. He's nailed for 90 minutes when fit, and he's on penalties. And Everton have been attacking fairly well this season. So whilst the fixtures are a bit of a mixed bag, I think Calvert-Lewin is one of the best forwards to own in FPL at the moment. So the 3 players that I would most like to have: Saliba. This week, maybe Matoma, Adingra, Diaby, but longer term, Mbeumo. And then from the forwards, I'd probably move to either Edouard or Calvert-Lewin would be my top 2 of choice at the moment. So that's my current watch list. If we just move over to Fantasy Football Hub, I can just show you the AI recommended transfers. And again, if you would like to get your own AI recommended transfers, there is a link down below in the description for 30% off if you sign up to, I think, the annual membership. But what they recommend this week is either bank your free transfer for this week, which is most likely what I'll be doing, or selling Bowen and buying Matoma. And you can see by the graph, there isn't a lot in it, but they weight it obviously more so to the more immediate weeks. And over the next 2, you can see Matoma is the green line. Matoma is projected to get slightly more points than Bowen over the next couple, and then it evens out, and then Bowen maybe rises above Matoma. So for me, as a result, whilst Matoma is slightly up on projected points, this feels a bit short-sighted, and I'm not desperate to remove Bowen at the moment. So that's my watch list. Those are the AI recommended transfers. If we just switch back to my team at the moment, I'd love to know what your opinion on is. My opinion on my team is: who would you bench? Who would you start? Do I need to make a transfer? And how scared should I be about not owning Erling Haaland? So guys, there you have it. That is my Game Week 11 team selection. Do let me know what you think of it down below, and let me know some of your dilemmas in the comments as well, and I'll do my best to answer as many of them as possible. If you did enjoy today's video, please do smash that like button. Let's aim for 2,000 likes on today's video. Make sure to tune into tomorrow's deadline decisions video and Saturday's deadline stream. But until next time, thank you very much for watching. Cheers. Bye-bye.